So I was going to do that thing that YouTubers do that's like, oh, only 5% of you guys are subscribed, so don't forget to subscribe. But then I looked, and it's like a lot of you are subscribed already. Anyways, my point being, subscribe if you haven't, because I'm kind of curious how heavy one of those silver plaques are. Like, has anybody else ever thought about that? All right, let's go ahead and get into today's scary story. It's from r/scary stories from user Trash Tia. Just based on who the author is, I already know it's going to be some crazy twist. So we're in for a treat. When the kids in my town turn 18 years old, they kill their parents. I just discovered why. They called us the miracle generation. Children were seemingly not allowed in this town. And when by some miracle they were somehow allowed to exist, they lasted maybe 3 or 4 days. So when an entire class of babies came out of nowhere, that's what our town named us. Miracles. 18 years later, Seth Daniels killed his parents. And I don't mean kill, like he burned the house down with them in it, or poisoned them in their sleep. I mean kill. According to the town newspaper my mom is always feverishly reading, the bodies were mutilated, like an animal had torn them apart. I knew Seth. I'd known him since we were little kids. He lived across the road from me. Seth regularly invited me over to watch Power Rangers and would enthusiastically sing and dance to the intro. Seth loved his mom and dad. The town media went radio silent except for one measly article in the paper. I figured nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking. But it didn't make sense. This curse had allowed us to live for 17 years, and now it wanted to do something? And why would it lash out at parents instead of kids? Why force the kid to kill their parents? There was one detail that jumped out at me. It was Seth's 18th birthday. The exact day. I knew this because he'd been talking about having a party at school. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist, but what kid actively talks about having a birthday party on the same day they're planning to brutally murder their parents? I asked a lot of questions because nobody else was making noise, and I refused to believe Seth had willingly done something like this. Mom said the Daniels case was too gruesome to tell me about, so I did some digging myself. We're a small town. Finn Novak is son of the sheriff, so it cost me $20 and a promise to introduce him to my brother to get into his dad's office. It was very cloak and dagger. I definitely felt like one of those TV detectives. The documents were still fresh in the top drawer beneath his desk. Daniels. I picked up the folder, motioning for Finn to keep a lookout. He tossed me a pissed off look, but attempted to charm the receptionist into a conversation while I studied the autopsy notes. After skim reading, I wished I could delete the information from my memory. Mara! I lifted my head. The boy was making some pretty intense hand gestures worthy of a Saturday morning cartoon. Are you crazy? Get out of there! Before I could answer, he pointed behind him, eyes wide. My dad is coming, he mouthed. Nodding, I forced myself to stay calm despite the way my stomach twisted. I snapped several photos of the notes before swiftly leaving the room and closing the door behind me. It's not like Finn expressed any interest in what I was looking for, but he still sat with me on a bench in the middle of town square, a Starbucks latte balanced on his lap. So, he leaned over, peeking at my phone while loudly slurping on his straw. What's the verdict? Did he kill them? I had a hard time answering without bringing up my meager breakfast. Yes, I said, staring at the photo on my phone screen. Mom was right. The autopsy notes were gruesome, because there was barely anything left to perform an autopsy on. In my head, Seth had maybe stabbed his parents, but in reality, he had ripped them apart. The notes contained a detailed description of the remains, which weren't much. A single torso and a head. That was it. Both victims were Sonia, 38, and Oliver, 39, Daniels. The images were black and white, and I could barely make them out. Just 2 square photos stapled to the end of the report. But they wouldn't leave my mind. A single head. A torso. That was all that remained of Seth's parents. Which meant somehow he'd had the strength to rip them to shreds. I was already thinking it when I passed my phone to Finn, who hissed through his teeth. Holy shit, he muttered, passing me his empty cup while squinting at the screen. Crazy asshole actually butchered them. He didn't butcher them, I managed to choke out, despite knowing I was deep in denial. I couldn't defend Seth when the evidence was sitting right there in black and white. He hadn't just killed them, he had dismembered them in a way no human, not even some genius serial killer could. This was animalistic. The more I thought about it, the sicker I got. It wasn't until my mouth filled with vomit and I was on my hands and knees choking up my guts that the gravity of the situation truly slammed into me. If Seth Daniels had killed his mom and dad out of nowhere, was that fate eventually going to take me too? It had to be the curse. There was no other explanation. I didn't dig any further into the investigation because I was terrified of finding something I didn't want to see. Murder motivated by emotion or motive is awful, sure, but it can still be understood. But when it comes to some separate force taking control of your will and forcing you to kill, that's when there are no real answers, only questions. Our town had been plagued by an invisible force that had taken away our children. Could it be that we'd angered it? By being born, had we somehow pissed off this all-seeing God? It was several days later when Mom told me Seth had been taken to juvenile detention and never even got a court case. He admitted to it automatically. Yes, I killed my mom and dad. Those were his exact words when he was dragged from his house with his arms bound behind his back, a pair of Ray-Bans hiding his eyes from the world. The words were cruel and unforgiving, spoken in an emotionless drone. He didn't care. Watching him get swarmed by local news crews from my bedroom window, Seth almost resembled a celebrity. The way he was shoved through the flashing lights and microphones, Seth hated attention. Usually, if he got picked to read aloud in class, his cheeks would turn bright red and he'd stumble through the passage trying not to cry. The boy I saw now was not my neighbor. This version of him held his head high, movements swift and robotic as he calmly climbed into the back of a waiting SUV. Despite seeing all that, despite watching Seth stand uncaring in front of the cameras, I still knew he would never do something like that. I know murderers can turn out to be the most unexpected people. Friends, family, the people you grow up with and trust. But there was something about the Daniels case that I couldn't get out of my head. Mom told me to forget about it when I started asking questions about this so-called curse, and about how exactly I was born. Over dinner, I asked one too many. She dropped her fork on her plate, startling my twin sitting across from me. Freddie and I were fraternal twins and looked nothing alike, but that didn't stop Mom from trying to dye my hair when I was little so I'd match Freddie's red curls. I have natural brown hair, Freddie is a redhead, and Noah's a blonde. Normal people would probably question that, but in our town it was pretty common for kids not to resemble their parents, because of the lengths people went to in order to have children. It doesn't make sense, I said for maybe the third or fourth time, fully aware I was hyperfixating. Why now? I forked pasta into my mouth, ignoring my twin's glare. If we really are cursed, why wait a whole 17 years? Mara. Mom cleared her throat, her lips pausing on the rim of her wine glass. When Dad worked late, Mom pulled out the wine. We weren't supposed to tell him. What did I tell you about discussing business that is not ours? But it is my business, I said. Seth was my friend. Freddie had already finished his dinner, occasionally glancing down at his Switch. You didn't even like him. Do you remember when you called him an asshole? This time I kicked him. From the way he jumped in his seat, his eyes widening for a fraction of a second, it hurt him. We were 12, and he stole my doll. You still called him an asshole, Freddie said in a sing-song voice, his gaze flicking back to his game. I actually played with him, and he only paid attention to you because he wanted to play on your DS. You called him a big-nosed freak, I spat back. So did you. Noah, our more well-behaved little sister, ducked her head to hide her laughter. That's enough. Mom, who was halfway through a bottle of wine, slammed the glass down on the table. Her eyes found mine. Mara, if you ask one more question about the Daniels case, I'll take your phone for a week. Freddie snickered, but she snapped at him too. That goes for you too. She stood up. I'm going upstairs. Whatever is on the rota, please clean the dishes and make the kitchen tidy before your father comes home. Freddie huffed like a child, folding his arms. What about Noah? He gestured to her. She was laughing. I was not, Noah squeaked. Judging by the sudden noise that escaped my brother's mouth, our little sister had joined me in my assault. Mom didn't reply, taking her glass of wine and the whole bottle. She slunk upstairs as usual. To it. Every night when Dad was at work, Mom abandoned us at the dinner table and did the same ritual she had been doing since we were little kids. Armed with nothing but wine and a candle, Mom would lock herself in her bedroom until the early hours of the next morning. When we were 10, Freddie and I attempted to sneak in and see what she was doing. But at that point, at that late into the night, Mom had fallen asleep on the floor, the candle still flickering away. That night was the same. Mom disappeared all night, and I took it upon myself to clean away the dishes. Freddie went to hang out with his friends, and Noah practically went brain dead once she got on TikTok. Mom had a strict rule. No matter what, we had to hand our phones in at 11 every night. That included all electronics, including switches. In fact, she went as far as switching off the outlets in our rooms, which meant no late night games of Mario Kart. I thought we would eventually grow out of the rule, but no. Freddie was, of course, the golden boy, so he had left his phone and switch on the kitchen table before leaving for his friend's house, which Mom also said wasn't allowed, but I guess that rule didn't apply to him. I was sitting on the kitchen countertop, frowning at my phone screen, reading and rereading the Daniel's autopsy notes when Noah let out a shriek. The time was 11:01, which meant Noah was already breaking the no phone rule. I jumped off the countertop, pausing to throw my phone next to Freddie's before the thought hit me. Why was my first automatic thought to put my phone down? I tried to pocket it, before a pulsing pain suddenly ignited between my fingers. It felt like an electric shock, only lasting a few seconds, maybe not even that. My phone slipped from my hands, but not before the lights above flickered and went out completely, leaving me in the darkness. Damn. The warm glow of the hallway outside confirmed that just the kitchen had short-circuited. Mom had always been antsy about technology altogether. She only got us phones because we begged, and Freddie had bought his Switch himself with cash from his part-time job. My gaze found my mostly okay iPhone lying face down on the pastel pink tiles. I reached to pick it up before that same pain writhed up my index finger. Mara! Noah's squeak came from the lounge. I found her sitting on the floor, her phone in her hands. Her eyes were wide, her lips stretched into a grin. Look, she whispered. Following her gaze, I saw my sister grasping her phone. I saw nothing interesting. She was watching a YouTube video, some kind of video essay on serial killers. What? It's charging. At first, I had no idea what she was talking about, before my gaze found the charging symbol at the top of her screen, a lightning bolt indicating the charger was inserted. But when I followed Noah's pointer finger, I glimpsed her phone charger on the other side of the room, still plugged into the outlet. Noah was shaking with anticipation. Wait, that's not even the best part, she squeaked. Look what happens if I let it go. My sister dropped the phone and the symbol disappeared. She picked it back up and the charging indicator flashed. Initially, I thought she was playing some kind of trick, but she did it again, and I realized I wasn't seeing things. The phone was charging itself without a charger. Noah, being Noah, automatically thought she had some kind of superpower. My little sister jumped to her feet and strode over to the television, prodding the screen, only for nothing to happen. Then she tried the lamp on the stand and the PlayStation 4. Nothing. I admit I was kind of excited for maybe a full minute before I realized there was most likely a scientific explanation, and there was. According to the article I found online, yes, electronic devices can charge their batteries through various methods without being plugged into a source of electricity. Still, according to the author of the article, it usually wasn't enough power to make a difference. So why had Noah's phone actually been charging? I watched the percentage jump from 10% to 16%. I put it down to a malfunction. It made sense if I really thought about it. The next day, however, did not make sense. I was still half asleep when I awoke to my brother looming over me. What is it? Freddie waved the phone in my face. Just read it. I did, skimming through the messages, each one sending my gut hurling further and further into my throat. There was a sea of gray messages from the recipient, and only 2 messages in blue from Freddie. Skinned of flesh. It was gnarly. Miss Kane fainted, and my mom had a panic attack. Skull completely pulverized. I can't believe I saw this shit, man. What the hell? There are people guarding the scene now, but earlier, you could just walk in. Animal. Crazy psycho. The living room was covered in blood, like a horror movie. My guy painted the walls. There was nothing left on the stretcher they brought out, just skin? There were blue sheets over the body, but there wasn't even a body. I think I saw a hand or maybe a foot, but they definitely weren't attached. I don't know, it was gross. Mom wants to send me to therapy, LMAO. My brother finally replied in blue. Who was it? Sheriff's son, came the reply. That kid is going to hell, and I'm an atheist. I hope he gets his karma, because who does that? Wasn't he close to his pop? Jesus Christ, I can't get my head around it. It took a moment for the messages to sink in, and I was out of bed before my brain could catch up with my body. Finn. In 3 strides, I was on my knees, choking up dust. Freddy dropped down onto my bed with a hissed breath. Didn't you know that kid? He whispered. That was Finn, right? His words weren't fully registering. This time, I did throw something up. Something sour and slimy spluttering from my lips, my stomach heaving. You okay? No. Do you want me to help? No. I swiped at my mouth, but it kept coming. This time, bouts of stomach lining filling my mouth. Did you check? I managed to choke out, spitting out vomit. Huh? Did you check? I said slowly, spacing out my words. To see if it was Finn. Oh yeah, it was him all right. The cops already caught him. Apparently, he was trying to make a run for it. Freddy sighed. Maybe he was scared. It didn't make sense. How could Finn kill his father? He loved his dad. I barely knew the kid outside of him helping me get into his dad's office, but even then, I saw photo frames on Sheriff Novak's desk. I saw photos of the two of them at Christmas and Father's Day, on vacations and just hanging out together. In kindergarten, a boy had loudly announced that Sheriff Novak was a pig, and Finn wrestled him to the ground, almost knocking the kid out. Finn was tiny, lean. There was no way he was strong enough to rip his father apart. Damn, Freddy groaned, hanging upside down off the bed. He twisted his head to look at me, blowing dark red hair out of his eyes. Are we cursed? That was the first time I found myself nodding, my thoughts dizzy. But that didn't stop me from trying to talk to him. According to Mom, Finn was being shipped off to juvenile detention at noon. Until then, he was locked up downtown. Sheriff Novak was dead, so the town's law enforcement was scrambling to appoint someone new. The station had been packed all morning before people slowly started to disperse. I took my chance, slipping in with a group of frantic parents screaming about the safety of their kids. While the woman behind the counter tried to calm them down, I ducked through the door at the back and into the cells. I expected guards. There were none. I figured the chaos with the parents had given me the perfect distraction. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside was the flickering light. Not from the bulbs overhead. In front of the cells sat an empty desk with an open laptop. As I stepped closer, I realized it was the laptop screen flickering erratically. When the bulb above me shattered, I jumped. Mara. Finn's voice sounded just like Seth's, flat and emotionless. I spun around and caught sight of him standing behind the bars, hands wrapped around them. Very Silence of the Lambs. Finn loved horror movies, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he was jokingly reenacting a scene, though that would have required him to show even a shred of emotion. I wasn't sure what I'd expected, but it wasn't this. I thought Finn would be hysterical, crying, swearing he was innocent, that he would never kill his father. Instead, I was staring at the face of a murderer, or half of one. His lips curved into a faint smile, but there was nothing behind it. Just like Seth, his eyes were hidden behind a pair of Ray-Bans, expensive-looking ones that clashed with his plain short-sleeved tee and jeans, both stained with his father's blood. When I opened my mouth to speak, his arms dropped to his sides. Aren't you going to wish me a happy birthday? The phantom legs of a spider crawled up my spine. I took an involuntary step toward him, my breath catching in my throat. It's your birthday? He nodded once. I turned 18 yesterday. Wish me a happy birthday. Happy birthday, I whispered. And did you? I killed my dad. Finn finished for me in the exact same tone as Seth. No remorse, no hesitation, nothing to suggest he regretted what he'd done. I pulled out his lungs and cut off his head. I skinned him to the bone and dumped his guts in the toilet to hide them. But I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. You didn't mean to. Finn cut me off, slicing straight through my spiraling thoughts. "When is your birthday again?" he asked, without a trace of curiosity. The question was simple, but it sent me stumbling backward into the cold concrete wall. "When is your birthday?" "Why?" His expression never changed. "When is your birthday?" "June 23rd, I breathed. Finn stayed still for a moment before slowly slipping off his Ray-Bans. At first, I thought he was going for some dramatic reveal, like a character in a noir movie about to confess every grisly detail of what he'd done to his father. Instead, the glasses dropped from his fingers, and I saw where his eyes should have been. Twin caverns of darkness stared back at me, somehow still alive. I couldn't stop myself from stepping closer, peering through the dim light of the cell. No, I wasn't imagining it. Finn's eyes were gone, ripped clean from his skull. The skin around the sockets was torn and bruised, the damage jagged and violent. "Happy birthday," he said in the same dull, lifeless drawl. I recoiled. Finn bent down slowly, felt around for the glasses, and slid them back on. For the 23rd, I mean. Then he pressed his face against the bars. This time, a manic giggle burst out of him from nowhere. His expression stayed vacant, but his mouth stretched into the grin of someone who had butchered his father and didn't care. "I'm looking forward to you joining me." That was when I left, but before I could slam the door shut behind me, his voice followed me down the hallway. "And your brother." Finn's laughter turned hysterical, almost animalistic. I could hear the clang of his skull smashing against the bars. "Don't forget your brother." I was dragged out of the sheriff's office almost immediately and lectured by my mom for 2 straight hours. But even sitting in the living room while she yelled at me, half the precinct crowded around her, I couldn't stop hearing Finn's words. It was only when Mom pointed at me, her lips moving soundlessly, that I snapped back to reality and got hit with another lecture about privacy and illegal entry. I ignored most of it. Sitting cross-legged on the couch beside Noah, who was pretending to scroll through her phone, I finally spoke up. "I think it's the curse." The room fell silent. Mom looked genuinely startled for a second before shaking her head sharply. "That is not what we are talking about, young lady. Do you understand how serious this is?" "Yeah, Mara," Freddie chimed in from across the room. Like Noah, he was doing a terrible job pretending. He wasn't enjoying every second of my interrogation. "I can't believe you'd be so careless and stupid." He trailed off. "Oh wait, didn't you break in last month to steal documents from the Daniels case?" A grin tugged at his mouth. "Pretty sure that was illegal too, but what do I know? I'm just a high schooler. I don't sneak into the sheriff's office when I'm supposed to be in class." I glared at him. "How do you even know that? You go through my phone?" He shrugged, comfortably adjusting himself on the recliner. "Your passcode is 4 zeros. A toddler could bypass it." I don't know if it was the stress of what happened with Finn or my brother's dumb grin, but I was already lunging across the room to... I don't know. He's taller than me, more built. He could squash me if he really wanted to, so what I thought was going to be a fight turned into me trying to do some damage while Freddie just shoved me away with a scoff. I did manage to hit him in the nose, but that was when Mom came in, pulling us apart and going into Mom mode. Mom mode was when she got really mad. Noah decided she no longer wanted to be a spectator and wandered into the kitchen. I was sent to my room and Freddie was lectured for antagonizing me. Several hours later, he appeared at my door with a half-eaten donut, a cup of hot cocoa, and a half-assed apology, which was his attempt at letting me know he was scared I was going to get myself hurt. I took the donut and cocoa and told him to go away. He did, after standing there for a while looking like a kicked puppy. I closed the door in his face when he made a point of trying to make me feel sorry for him. I wanted to talk to him about Finn, but he would just tell Mom and get me in trouble. So I found myself with information that was driving me crazy. My 18th birthday was approaching, and more kids were turning on their moms and dads. After Finn, it was Addie, then Jason, Sarah, and Kiara. All of them had turned 18 within weeks of each other. I thought the town was going to start freaking out and calling those of us who were left monsters, insisting we never should have been born. But to my surprise, there was barely any news coverage, and it almost became normal to hear about yet another kid being sent to juvie. June arrived, and the days crept by faster and faster until it was the eve of my 18th birthday, and I found myself standing in the bathroom, trembling fingers wrapped around a razor blade. Every time I thought about actually doing it, slicing into my flesh until my wrists were dripping scarlet, and I was struggling to breathe, I couldn't. So I dumped the razor in the trash and left the bathroom, only to run into Noah. Wrapped in her pink bathrobe, my little sister looked like a giant marshmallow hiding behind scraggly blonde curls. Mara. Noah was grinning ear to ear, as usual. She grabbed my hands and squeezed them. Do you remember what we did as kids? From the look on her face, I knew exactly what she was talking about. When Mom was in bed or at work on our birthday eve, the three of us would scour her room for presents. We had eventually grown out of it, but every year, Noah insisted on at least one search. It's not like I could refuse when my sister already had a tight grip on my arm and was yanking me into Mom's room. When I stumbled inside, I found our brother on his knees under Mom's bed, rifling through boxes and bags. I was surprised Noah had managed to drag Freddie into it, considering every other year he rolled his eyes and bid us adieu, calling Noah a baby. But now he was just as enthusiastic as he had been when he was little, when he used to shush us and turn it into a game. I would take one corner, Noah would take the closet, and Freddie would crawl under the bed because he was the only one who wasn't scared of monsters hiding under there. For a moment, I considered just walking away and telling them they were being stupid and acting like children. But I did want to forget about the reality of turning 18 and possibly murdering my family. In a way, I guess I wanted to be a kid again. So, just like when I was 5, I wandered over to the furthest corner to search for presents that didn't exist. I knew they didn't exist because Mom gave us cash every birthday inside a card. Still, it was fun to search and feel that childlike magic come over me again. The thrill of pulling things aside and delving into boxes for hidden treasures, dolls we wanted, or the newest games console. To make Noah happy, I shoved a few things aside, finding myself smiling. Mom was always bad at hiding our presents. I was about to make that comment when Noah squeaked in delight. I found something. When I twisted around, she was already partially inside the closet, one foot sticking out, her head buried in Mom's clothes. It looked like she was grasping at something. Freddie, who had crawled out from under the bed, straightened up and shot me a look. Really? His eyes said. Aren't we a little too old for this? We are, I mouthed back. His grin transported me back to when we were 9 and the two of us had collectively found 5 wrapped gifts. Then spent an hour shaking them to figure out what they were. But there was also that glimmer of excitement in his eyes when he joined Noah in front of the closet. The two of them managing to heave out what looked like a large box. I joined them hesitantly. Any idea what it is? I frowned at the box the two of them were struggling to hold properly. It was huge, almost the size of the closet itself. When Freddie and Noah finally managed to balance it, the three of us stepped backwards to take it in. Immediately, something cold slithered down my spine. First, it was the state of the box. Old. The cardboard was rotting. Noah shrieked when a mountain of bugs crawled out of the flaps. Looking closer, it seemed to be a box for a toy or a doll. But when I squinted, I realized the box was open. It had been open for a long time, and the more I looked, the sicker I felt. There was something staining the cardboard, an old red color painting the flaps and the inside of the thing itself. Suddenly, things were happening too quickly for me to understand. A blur of movement to my right, Freddie dropping to his knees and barfing everywhere. Then Noah stumbling out of the room. I could hear her screams. I could see my brother retching. But I couldn't tear my eyes away from the front of the box, because on the front of the box was me, Mara. I was staring at a photo of myself smiling widely, colorful words printed across the box. Now grows to full size, Mom's Net certified. The printed words looked like a different language, even though I could still read them. Child TM. Have you ever wanted your very own child? Well, now you can. Just pull out the cord, and you have your very own son/daughter. I stepped forward when something moved. Freddie yanked me back, but I was already delving deeper into my mother's closet and finding a much newer box. This one was unopened, occupied. A fully grown college-aged guy peeked through the plastic packaging. This time, I saw the cord, like an umbilical cord, connected to the thing inside the box, which was asleep. Its eyes were shut. Freddie, it read, this time in college. Before Freddy could see it, I shoved it back, stumbling, my heart in my throat. I frowned at the blood staining the bottom of the second box when my brother grabbed my hand and yanked me backwards. Before I could fully register what was going on, he was dragging me downstairs. I think he was trying to get me out of there, but then he stopped, freezing in place. When I followed his gaze, I found 2 birthday cards set up on the mantelpiece. They were labeled in our mother's handwriting. The purple one was mine, the pink one was Freddy's. I opened mine up, but instead of a $20 note slipping out, I found myself staring at a countdown reflected onto my face in red light. 59, 58, 57. Below that, my dearest Mara, I'm so happy I met you and was able to call you my daughter. I found you at the age of 17, but you've given me a lifetime of memories I will cherish. You'll be running out very soon. And like the other moms, I don't want to see you go. I'm supposed to be giving you back tomorrow, but we have each made a pact. With every child we obtained, every mother and father agreed that sending you back to those people would be terrible. Giving you to another mother would break my heart, sweetheart. I've heard your biological mother has never stopped searching for you, and trust me, she won't find you. So I'm not going to give you back. I do not support the company I got you from, but I've always wanted a child, and this town cannot have children. I've lost too many inside me to be hopeful. Happy birthday, my beautiful daughter, and goodbye. I'm not sure what emotions I felt at that moment, but I finally understood why Finn, Seth, and the others had killed their parents. I was wrong. There was a motive. Rage. What the hell? Freddy dropped his card, eyes wide. We need to get out. We need to get out of here, because whatever this thing is, it's going to blow. My brother shook me violently. Are you listening to me? We need to get Noah and get out of here. Going to blow, I thought dizzily. Had Mom planted a bomb? There was no time to find out. No way to get out. I was nodding along with my brother, trying to find Noah, who had disappeared, when it hit me like ice-cold water. Finn standing in the cells with his eyes carved out. Seth wearing Ray-Bans to cover his eyes. Every other kid I saw always wore glasses, always hid their eyes. With the countdown reflecting onto the wall and Freddy screaming at me to find our sister, I wandered into the kitchen, pulled open Mom's prized knife drawer, and picked out the sharpest blade I could find. It had been driving me crazy ever since seeing the sheriff's son's mutilated face. Why would he do that to himself? Why would he kill his father and then carve out his own eyes? Part of me thought it really was a curse that had taken them as some kind of reward. But I was wrong. Of course I was wrong. Finn Novak didn't scoop out his eyes because he was crazy. He carved them out because he had gotten that exact birthday card, that exact countdown. And somehow he had known, just like me, as I stuffed my sweater sleeve into my mouth, that the bomb was part of us. Digging the blade into my eye and jerking it at an angle to sever it, I screamed into my sleeve, managing to choke out sobbing pleas for my brother to do the same. The countdown was still in my head, and if I concentrated, I could hear it. Beep, beep, beep. The thing sandwiched inside me. It could have been either eye or both, but I didn't have time to guess. I was already on my knees when I managed to scoop out my eye with the knife, and then my fingers. When the beeping stopped, I pressed my face into the kitchen floor and breathed in and out, using my sleeve to staunch the blood pouring down my face. My vision was ruined, and I was pretty sure I was going to be blind, but it was better than being blown to pieces. Freddy was already in front of me, eyes wide and confused, clumsily grasping for the knife to do the same. "We're okay," my brother hissed. He was already following my lead, biting into his sleeve and hovering the knife in front of his eye. Noah stood in the doorway. I could see her shadow, and just seeing her, I knew she was trembling, too scared to come near either of us. I opened my mouth to reassure her while helping Freddy sever the thing inside him. Then, pop. I heard it first, an audible popping sound in my ear. Noah screamed behind me. Something warm hit my face, warm and red, coating my eyes and cheeks. When I wiped this startling scarlet from my face, I found glistening blood dripping from the walls and slick across the floor, the countertops, everything. I reached out for my brother, but he wasn't there anymore. I don't care if I'm some artificially grown freak who was born at 17 years old. I've already raided my kitchen for the best knives I can find, so I can find my mother and father and make them suffer. Alright, I don't know about you guys, but that's not at all what I expected to happen. I feel like every time I read one of Trash Tia's stories, that happens. Like, I'll think, oh yeah, okay, this is kind of making sense. I see where this is going. And then boom, something completely different and unexpected, which I might be alone here. Like, that might just be me being clueless to what's going on around me and what I'm perceiving. But I don't know. Let me know. Let me know if that happens to you guys when I read some of these stories, especially Trash Tia, because like I said, every time I read one of their stories, I always get blindsided and very surprised. Anyways, huge shout out to Trash Tia, as usual, serving up a banger. And shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support on the channel. If you guys do want to further support the channel, that link is in the description. However, it is completely optional, not at all required. And with that said, I don't know. See you guys tomorrow? Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.